young man traveling on a train. In his notebook, he has written that he will no longer drink, fight, or cry. It also says he needs to eat a cookie. He eats it and crosses it off as completed. Arriving in a small town, he goes to his family's diner, but his sister Si-ju asks him to wander around since their mom will only be back in the evening. The young man heads to the local bathhouse where he is surprised to find a scanner lock on the lockers. As he tries to figure it out, the constant beeping irritates a nearby man. Approaching the young man, the annoyed stranger is ready to scold him, but upon seeing him undress, he quickly changes his tone. Intricate dragon tattoos cover the young man's body, revealing his ties to the criminal world. The man's name is Kim Tae-sik, and today is his first day out of prison after serving 10 years for murder. By evening, Tae-sik decides to visit his old friend, Cheon-moo. He finds him scolding his subordinates. Seeing each other, the two are genuinely happy to reunite. Tae-sik explains he stopped by only out of courtesy, bids farewell, and leaves. However, the seemingly cheerful friend isn't as thrilled as he appears. He orders his men to keep a close eye on the newcomer in town. Tae-sik returns home and finally gets to see his mother. The woman is happy about his return, but his sister is less enthusiastic. In the morning, he heads to the police station to check in and register his arrival. The officer recognizes him. They went to school together as kids. The cop advises Tae-sik to leave the area since the locals still remember and fear him, but Tae-sik assures him there will be no trouble. Later, he visits a doctor asking to have the dragon tattoos removed from his body, but the doctor discourages him. First, the procedure would leave scars all over his body. Second, it is extremely expensive. Meanwhile, his mother storms into the office of a local official, Cho. She demands that he leave her diner alone and stop sending his thugs her way. Later, Tae-sik sits on the roof of the house, but his sister tries to chase him off, claiming it's her spot where no one else is allowed. When Tae-sik asks her to call him brother, she refuses. Afterward, Tae-sik gets a job at a local auto repair shop. One day, two cops see him and start reminiscing about the past. It turns out that 10 years ago, Tae-sik controlled the entire town, and no one dared to cross him. One day, the local boss and the remnants of his gang decided to challenge Tae-sik, and he stabbed the leader in the chest. Tae-sik was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and his two friends took over the town. However, over time, Cho arrived in town. Now he is running for local office, but back then, he was managing a brothel. Gathering his strength, Tae-sik pays a visit to the two town bosses and forces them to pledge loyalty to him. Now that Cho is aiming for the upper echelons of power and controlling the entire town, Tae-sik's unexpected return home takes everyone by surprise. What's even more startling is his unpredictability. He has changed so much that no one knows what to expect from him now. One day, his school-age sister finds him at her school. Tae-sik has decided to enroll and study. His sister's teacher turns out to be his ex-girlfriend. She and Tae-sik take a walk together, during which he apologizes to her. Later, he catches up with his sister, who is admiring a multiplayer console through a shop window. She starts explaining how it can be used to watch movies and listen to music. Having spent years in prison, Tae-sik is unaware of technological progress and thinks she's joking. Suddenly, a young man hits him. The guy has been trying to court his sister for 2 years and doesn't like some stranger getting close to her. Shoving Tae-sik into an alleyway, he beats him up while his cronies restrain the girl. Hyeju doesn't know how to get rid of this persistent suitor. The gang members also join in, assaulting Tae-sik. However, they immediately stop when his torn clothes reveal his dragon tattoos. Taking advantage of the pause, Tae-sik walks away without throwing a single punch in return. Later, back at home, Tae-sik's sister gives him ointment and bandages so he can treat his injuries. Next, we see Cho hosting a dinner, celebrating his successful election to the city council. Gathering his henchmen, he announces that he will give control of the city's largest nightclub to whoever can secure the land owned by the old lady, Sunflower. One of the henchmen looks uneasy. Sunflower's son is Tae-sik, their former boss, but the nightclub is a tempting prize for all of them. Nonetheless, the second henchman, Cheon-moo, decides to win favor with Cho, assuring him he will either negotiate with the old woman or bulldoze her shack. He is the only one unaware that Sunflower's son is their ex-boss and former king of the town. By morning, Cheon-moo is already at the old lady's diner with his thugs. They storm in, ignoring Tae-sik quietly having breakfast, and start trashing the place. They have no idea who is sitting at the next table. When Cheon-moo himself walks in after his gang, he spots Tae-sik and is struck speechless. When the former boss grabs him by the throat and pins him to the wall, Cheon-moo is on the verge of tears. Only the old lady stepping into the room halts the altercation. The thugs quickly flee the diner. Later, Cho is informed about who lives in the old lady's house. He remembers Tae-sik immediately. After all, it was Tae-sik who killed the town's previous boss 10 years ago, paving the way for Cho's ambitions. The gangster orders his men to keep a close watch on the ex-convict and report every move he makes. Later, we see Tae-sik and his sister sitting on the roof. They gradually reconnect, and their interactions become more friendly. Tae-sik teaches his sister math, while she, in turn, teaches him English. The next day, Tae-sik gets his first paycheck and buys gifts for his mother and sister. Hye-ju, in her usual manner, accuses him of trying to win everyone over, but later realizes she was wrong and makes peace with her brother. One morning, she snatches Tae-sik's notebook with his personal commandments, laughs at it but promises to fulfill one of them, taking him on a picnic. The following morning, the whole family goes out into nature. One evening after work, Tae-sik is approached by a limping henchman of the gang leader whose murder landed Tae-sik in prison. The man warns him that his family's land is highly coveted by the local boss and suggests it would be safer if he and his loved ones left town. Their meeting is observed by criminals tasked with watching Tae-sik, and they report this encounter to their superiors. Over tea, Cheon-moo and his companion discuss why the limping man would meet with the former crime king. They conclude that Cho must have offered Tae-sik control of the city's largest nightclub, the one they are competing for. This idea enrages the gangsters, and they decide to deal with their former boss once and for all. The next morning, Cheon-moo and his crew show up at the diner again. This time, they are far less restrained. Forcing the old woman outside, they proceed to destroy the establishment. Hye-ju runs after her brother, but by the time they return, everyone is gone. The family starts cleaning up the diner. Later, Tae-sik goes to Cho's office and asks him to leave their family and their land alone. After Tae-sik leaves, the gangster decides to take action. Since Tae-sik is on parole, he plans to provoke him into breaking the law and get him sent back to prison. The next morning, a jeep pulls up to the repair shop, and the leader of the group starts a conflict that quickly turns into violence. Within minutes, the gang members are kicking both Tae-sik and his boss. However, Tae-sik refuses to fight back, avoiding the provocation and forcing the thugs to leave empty-handed. That evening, Hye-ju's suitor shows up at the diner. He questions why the old woman adopted the man who killed her son. No one knows how he found out this secret, but Hye-ju overhears the conversation. She had been the only one unaware of this truth. That night, the woman explains everything to Hye-ju. She tells her that Tae-sik made a mistake in his youth and deeply regretted it, crying and feeling remorseful. She saw that he wasn't a bad person, visited him in prison, and eventually adopted him. Tae-sik realizes that after everything that has happened, he can no longer stay with the family. However, his sister, who comes to the roof to talk to him, asks him to stay. She tells him that when he killed the town's boss 10 years ago, who was her biological brother and frequently abused their mother, she was relieved that no one would hurt their mom again. She promises to call him her brother from now on and once again asks him to stay. The next morning, Tae-sik's mother goes to Cho's office again. She tells him that she knows everything about what really happened. She knows that 10 years ago, Cho manipulated her son and Tae-sik into a conflict, then deceitfully took over all the surrounding sunflower fields, and now he's targeting her land. She places a copy of her son's journal on the table and threatens to make it public unless the gangster leaves her family alone. Cho's limping henchman overhears the conversation and later tells Tae-sik everything. Then we see the gang members playing ball, with the high schooler who's been pursuing Hye-ju lingering nearby, the one who revealed the truth about Tae-sik. Riding a motorcycle, he waits for Hye-ju to cross the street and, speeding past, hits her in the head with a brick. Later, we see Tae-sik and his mother at the hospital sitting by an unconscious Hye-ju's bedside. The next day, Tae-sik goes to Cho and informs him that he and his family will leave in a few days. However, Cho demands that Tae-sik give him something in return, his hand. Only then will he leave them alone. Tae-sik agrees, and Cho orders his limping henchman to cut off Tae-sik's right hand. The henchman reluctantly severs the tendons, telling his boss that Tae-sik will never be able to lift a spoon again. Satisfied, Cho lets Tae-sik go. Later, in the car, the limping man confesses to the injured Tae-sik that he only inflicted a minor wound and that his hand will recover. It's his farewell gift. He advises Tae-sik to leave town as quickly as possible. The men are unaware that at the same time, Cho is issuing orders to the rest of his gang. While Tae-sik is at the hospital with his sister, the thugs break into his mother's house. They kill her by hanging, forge her signature on the land sale documents, and take the incriminating journal. The boss's task is complete. That night, Tae-sik discovers his mother hanging in the noose. After her funeral, a bulldozer demolishes their diner, flattening it to clear the land for a commercial complex. When his sister regains consciousness, Tae-sik cannot bring himself to tell her about their mother's death. Later that night, alone at home, he breaks all his commandments. He drinks bottle after bottle and cries, remembering his mother. We then see the grand opening of an extravagant building, the future nightclub. Cho appoints both of his henchmen as managers. The banquet begins, but another guest arrives. Tae-sik. He allows only the limping henchman to leave the event unharmed. The gangsters are baffled by their former boss's demeanor, wondering how he can act so confidently with a hand they believe is useless, unable to either fight or defend himself. The first to confront Tae-sik is the young thug who hospitalized his sister. Before the man can even swing his knife, a barely visible movement from Tae-sik ends with the thug's own blade buried in his side. Tae-sik then sets the exit on fire behind him, cutting off any chance of escape for the gangsters. Cho sends everyone after him. Men armed with bats attack, but Tae-sik moves straight through them, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. The gangsters in front of Tae-sik grow fewer, while the bodies behind him pile up. Suddenly, he faces the thug who hanged his mother. The man manages to land a knife in Tae-sik's side. But even this wound doesn't stop the demon Tae-sik has become. They have awakened the beast within him. Ignoring the knife, Tae-sik fights his way toward Cho with relentless determination. He reaches him and kills him, ending it all.